You close your eyes, you go to sleep, and suddenly the logical X-ray machine of your brain just completely breaks down.
No, totally. It just shatters.
Right, like during the day, we expect our minds to operate with this clean binary engineering. You feel anxious, you trace it back to a looming deadline at work, and the logic simply points and says, well, there it is, cause and effect.
Yeah, it's very linear, A to B.
Exactly. But the moment you cross that threshold into sleep, you step into this murky, chaotic psychological landscape where literally none of those daylight rules apply.
No, they really don't. It is the absolute definition of diagnostic muddy waters.
Yeah.
The linear, rational pathways we usually rely on just evaporate, leaving us with, well, bizarre imagery and these seemingly disconnected emotions.
Which brings us perfectly to today's deep dive. Welcome in, everyone. We are exploring a truly incredible piece of writing today called The Path Your Soul Walks at Night.
It's a fascinating text.
It really is. And our mission today is to use this evocative framework to decode the mysterious architecture of our dreams, specifically through a Freudian lens.
Right, getting into the underlying mechanics.
Exactly. We want to figure out why your mind uses such bewildering, sometimes really frightening imagery to process buried emotions. And we're going to discover why the monsters or the dark spaces in your subconscious might actually just be memories working overtime to keep you safe.
Yeah, and what makes this exploration so compelling is that it completely discards the idea of the unconscious as some math problem waiting to be solved.
Right, it's not an equation.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
It treats it as a living, breathing ecosystem. And it begins exactly where the dreamer begins finding yourself in this dense, symbolic forest.
Which is such a universal feeling.
It is. You don't consciously choose to enter this state.
Yeah.
The dream simply lets you in with the inevitability of sleep.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit, because we all know Freud's basic split between manifest and latent content.
Or the classic division.
Right, so the literal trees, the dirt path, the owl hooting in the dark. That's the manifest content, the costume, basically.
The surface layer, yeah.
Yeah, and then the buried feeling, or the childhood memory driving the dream, the actor underneath, is the latent content. But I want to talk about the mechanism here.
Okay, let's hear it.
Because historically, we've treated this like a stage play, like an actor wearing a literal costume. But reading the source, it feels much more like data compression.
Oh, I like that.
Like a zip file on a computer. Because your brain can't easily process or store the massive, overwhelming, uncompressed file of, say, a 7-year-old's profound loneliness.
No, it would crash the system entirely.
Exactly. It would completely crash the system. So the unconscious zips it up into a tiny, bizarre JPEG of a damp basement wall.
That is a highly accurate way to look at it, actually.
It saves space, but you have to know how the algorithm works to unzip it. The author notes that the dream forest doesn't actually create new memories, it just reveals these compressed files.
Right, it's a retrieval system.
Yeah, the curve of a tree root mirrors the exact curve of a stairwell from when you were 7.
And if we look at the neurology behind that zip file algorithm, it's really driven by what Freud called the censor.
Right, the gatekeeper.
Exactly. During your waking hours, your prefrontal cortex, which is the part of your brain responsible for logic, linear time, impulse control, it's highly active.
It's running the show.
It is. And it acts as this rigid filter, keeping raw, difficult emotions strictly compartmentalized. But when you enter REM sleep, that prefrontal cortex essentially goes offline.
The guard falls asleep.
The guard falls asleep. Meanwhile, the amygdala, which processes deep emotion, and the hippocampus, which manages memory, they are firing on all cylinders.
Wow. So the sensor physically loses its grip?
Precisely. And without that logical filter, the brain has to translate these massive emotional files into the only language it has left: sensory physical experience.
Because it can't use words anymore.
Right. The unconscious doesn't speak in prose. It translates what cannot be spoken into the smell of pine resin or the scrape of bark against your sleeve.
That is so poetic, but also so biological.
It is. The essay beautifully points out that in this state, an owl calling in the dark doesn't say who, it says mother.
Oh, wow.
Right. A thorn catching your arm isn't just a physical snag. It is the physical sensation of a boundary you crossed without realizing it.
That's incredible. But here's where it gets really interesting for me. If the brain has this incredible, complex compression algorithm designed to hide these things in the dark, why hide them at all?
That is the million-dollar question.
Like, why repress these files in the deep hollows of our minds to begin with? The exploration leads us deeper into this forest, into a place where the darkness is absolute.
The hollows.
The hollows, yeah. And the author suggests this darkness doesn't judge you. It is the negative space carved out by every prohibition. Every time you were told no, before you even understood what a yes looked like.
Right.
The repressed material isn't gone, it's just submerged. And the text describes it not as a dungeon, but as a nursery or a greenhouse.
A greenhouse is the vital metaphor here.
Yeah.
Because the unconscious is fiercely protecting these fragile truths. It's preserving things that the merciless clarity of daylight would otherwise just scorch.
Wait, I have to challenge that immediately, though.
Okay, go for it.
Because calling the repressed unconscious a greenhouse or a nursery sounds lovely and poetic, but what about chronic night terrors?
Ah, yeah.
What about people who wake up in cold sweats from PTSD nightmares? That doesn't feel like a nurturing greenhouse preserving fragile truths. That feels like a torture chamber. How is that protective?
No, that is a crucial distinction to make. When we talk about acute trauma or PTSD, we are actually looking at a failure of the dream work process.
A failure. Okay.
Yes. In trauma, the emotional file is too massive even for the zip file algorithm. The brain gets stuck in a loop, endlessly trying and failing to compress an unbearable reality.
Oh, I see. So the system is broken in that case.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But what this framework is referring to, the greenhouse, is our developmental repression, the everyday archiving of our psychological evolution.
So the normal wear and tear of growing up.
Precisely. For the vast majority of our dreams, the true work is not to hide things from you maliciously, but to keep your uncorrupted development safe.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So assuming machinery is working correctly, what exactly is the brain cultivating in this greenhouse? It's not usually dramatic events, is it?
No, and that's the brilliance of this perspective. What the unconscious preserves most carefully are the aftermaths.
The aftermaths?
Yeah, not the actions themselves, but the physiological states a child observes afterward. Think about mirror neurons.
Oh, right, because a kid doesn't understand context.
Exactly. A child doesn't understand the complex adult dynamics of a tax bill or a failing marriage, but their nervous system adopts the shallow breathing and the tense jaw of their parents.
Whoa.
They absorb the slackness in an adult's shoulder after an argument, the creak of a floorboard at 2 a.m.
The vibration of the room? The essay actually mentions that the child knows the exact weight of a hand or the precise temperature of a moment, even if they don't have the vocabulary for the event itself.
Right. And alongside those aftermaths, the unconscious archives, what are called phantom paths.
Phantom paths, I love that term.
The near misses. The question that died on your tongue at age 6. The time you almost reached out for comfort but pulled your hand back.
Oh, that's heartbreaking.
It is. The unconscious guards these unexpressed desires, these moments of pure potential, with far more care than actual tangible events that happen in reality.
Because in those phantom paths, the desire hasn't been corrupted yet.
Exactly.
If you actually ask the question, you risk being told no. You risk reality. But if the question dies on your tongue, the desire remains pure, safely folded away in the dark.
Yes, the origami of want. It is kept entirely intact because it was never exposed to the friction of the real world.
Which brings up a massive question. So what does this all mean?
Where does it lead?
Yeah. If the unconscious is acting as this hyper-vigilant archivist, fiercely protecting our pure potential and unexpressed desires, what is the original document it's guarding? What is sitting at the absolute center of this mental forest?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, to understand the core of that protected desire, we have to look at what Freud originally termed the primal scene.
Okay.
Now, historically, psychoanalysis defined this as a child literally witnessing parental intimacy. But modern interpretations, like the one we're exploring today, expand this into a much more universal mechanism.
Which is much more relatable, honestly.
Absolutely. It's really about the child's dawning awareness that their parents have a life, a physical dimension, and a bond that entirely excludes the child.
Not out of malice or cruelty, obviously,
No.
just through the basic necessity of adult existence.
Exactly. But to an infant or a very young child who previously experienced themselves as entirely merged with their caregiver, this exclusion is a profound neurological shock.
Like waking up in a different universe.
It is the first wound. Because logically, to want something, you first have to feel its absence. You cannot crave what you already possess.
Right.
This singular moment of realizing you are separate is the exact moment that desire is born.
So the realization of separation is the engine of all longing.
Yes.
I keep thinking about how that translates into our adult lives. It feels somewhat like phantom limb syndrome, but for our psyche.
That's a great way to frame it.
Like, we are constantly feeling the itch of a limb that was severed the very moment we realized we weren't merged with our caregivers anymore. And we spend our adult lives trying to scratch that phantom limb by seeking fame, chasing wealth, or clinging to romantic relationships. We're trying to fix a fundamental psychological amputation with external achievements.
That phantom limb analogy perfectly captures the mechanism. We wear masks in waking life. You know, the hunger for status just to be seen, the hunger for control just to feel secure.
Exactly.
But the fundamental argument here is that the wound of separation was never actually a wound. It was a threshold.
A threshold.
Yes. The deep, slow rhythm of primary desire isn't a desire to have things. It is a profound longing to be. It is the drive to return to the state before separation.
Before you drew your first breath and became a distinct, isolated entity.
Yes. The adult body is constantly searching the world for that original wholeness. And the forest of the dream offers what the author terms sacraments.
Sacraments.
Echoes of that wholeness. The coolness of moss in a dream physically echoes the coolness of a caregiver's hand, checking your forehead for a fever pure presence before touch had an agenda.
Wow.
The dream allows the individual to briefly dissolve that painful boundary between self and world.
I'm struggling a bit with the term sacrament here, though.
Oh, how so?
Well, if the brain is just feeding us these sensory echoes, the cool moss, the damp basement wall, to soothe the phantom limb of separation, isn't it basically just giving us a psychological pacifier? Like a delusion to keep us quiet?
It's easy to see it that way, sure. But a pacifier is designed to distract you from hunger. A sacrament, in this psychological context, is designed to integrate the hunger.
Integrated.
Right. It's not a fake version of reality. It's a momentary restoration of your baseline state. By experiencing that echo of wholeness, the nervous system gets a crucial reprieve from the constant, exhausting work of maintaining the boundaries of the adult ego.
Oh,
It doesn't distract you, it fortifies you.
So it's an active integration, which really shifts the whole perspective on how we should interact with these dreams when we wake up.
Completely.
Because if we follow this path all the way to the center of the forest, to that clearing where the conscious self finally meets the unconscious self, we have to figure out what to do with the information. And there's a line that completely blew my mind regarding this.
Which one?
It says, "The dream does not owe you clarity, it offers only immersion."
Ah, yes. A phenomenal distinction. Because we are so heavily conditioned by our waking logic to want to solve our dreams like equations.
Right. And it totally invalidates those cheap dream dictionaries you see online.
Oh, absolutely.
The ones that confidently tell you, oh, if you dream of tidal waves, it means they're going to come into money. Or if your teeth fall out, it means you feel powerless at work.
Right. Look up symbol A to get meaning B.
Exactly. This framework is screaming at us to stop treating the unconscious like a crossword puzzle.
This raises an important point. The unconscious does not use symbols as mere arbitrary stand-ins. A root on the forest floor doesn't just symbolize the concept of seeking. A cave doesn't just represent a womb.
So what are they doing?
The argument here is that they share a literal kinship and essence. The root physically embodies the mechanics of upthrust, of blindly seeking sustenance in the dark.
Okay, I'm tracking.
And the cave physically shares the essence of being recessed, of sheltering and promising a return to origin. Meaning isn't something you discover beneath the image like a prize in a cereal box. The meaning is generated by the image itself, in how your body reacts to it.
But hold on, the concept of an image sharing essence with an emotion is a beautiful phrase, but how does that actually happen neurologically?
Good question.
Like, how does a repressed memory of, say, a childhood rejection physically break down and become a thorny bush in a dream?
It really comes down to associative memory networks and how the brain processes emotional tags. Think of the concept of the economy of the unconscious, where absolutely nothing is wasted.
Nothing is wasted.
Right. The psyche operates kind of like a compost bin.
A compost bin.
Yes. When you experience a painful contradiction or a forbidden glance, your brain strips away the episodic details, the literal kitchen table, the specific words spoken, and isolates the core physiological feeling.
So just the raw emotion.
Exactly. Let's say it's a sudden, sharp sting of shame. During REM sleep, the brain's associative networks search for other nodes that share that exact physical signature. It finds the memory of a thorn snagging your skin.
Oh, wow.
It decouples the emotion from the original event and attaches it to the physical symbol. The raw material breaks down to fertilize new imagery.
That is fascinating. So the sharp sting of shame and the physical prick of the thorn are stored in the same emotional neighborhood in the brain.
You've got it.
The dream thrives on those physical equivalents.
Exactly. And because of that biological reality, the true work of dream work isn't about uncovering some objective, historical truth about your past.
You're not a detective at a crime scene.
Right. You aren't trying to reconstruct the exact conversation at the kitchen table. It's about changing your relationship to the underlying truth. It's about moving from being haunted by a memory to being accompanied by it.
Accompanied by it. That's a beautiful way to put it. Letting the ghost of your past sit beside you on the path as a witness, rather than fleeing from it as a threat.
Yes.
Because that ghost isn't an intruder, is it? It's just a piece of your own development that had to fold itself away into a zip file just to survive the daylight.
And when you stand in that center clearing of the dream, the recognition is entirely mutual. You recognize the forest as yourself, and the forest recognizes you as its own. You are standing in the raw, composted materials of your own psyche.
It's a profound shift in how we view the mechanics of our own minds. To summarize the massive amount of ground we've covered today, our dreams are not just random neurological static misfiring while we sleep.
Not at all.
And, assuming we aren't dealing with unprocessed trauma loops, they certainly aren't a horror movie trying to torment us. They are a profoundly sophisticated, protective process.
Highly sophisticated.
Your mind has built a quiet, internal greenhouse where your deepest longings, your uncorrupted aftermaths, and the phantom paths of what you almost did are kept perfectly safe under the cover of night.
And for you listening, the key takeaway is that you are quite literally made of the same internal dark matter that dreams itself into trees and stars and longing.
Yeah.
There's nothing inherently terrifying in your own mental forest. The darkness there isn't ignorance or evil. It was the womb of meaning. It's the place where the fragments of yourself can finally be found and integrated.
Absolutely. But that delicate integration brings me to a final thought I want to leave you with, something a bit outside the scope of what we've discussed today.
So, what's that?
Well, if our dreams are these delicate, perfectly balanced greenhouses that our nervous systems have spent decades cultivating just to protect our most fragile, uncorrupted pasts, what happens when we start actively interfering? Think about it. With the rapid rise of lucid dreaming techniques and even wearable tech designed to control the dream state, we are learning how to consciously break into our own unconscious.
Bringing the daylight in.
Exactly. We're taking our daylight logic and forcing it into the dark. Are we essentially taking a bulldozer into our own psychological greenhouses? If we force the floodlights on, do we risk scorching the very phantom paths our minds were working so hard to keep safe?
That is a very unsettling question.
Something to mull over the next time you try to take the wheel while you're asleep. Until next time, keep exploring the path.